Well, here we are in the workshop of Bruce Martin. Bruce, thank you for doing our demonstration this month, and we'll let you do your own introduction.
Okay, I'm Bruce Martin. Welcome to my shop. The purpose for our demonstration today is to talk about workshop electronics. We all have machines in our shops, or most of us do, and the longer you're into woodworking, the more machines you're going to get, and the older your machines get, the more likely they are to break down. So I wanted to talk about how I corrected a couple of problems that I had and get you all thinking about these things before you buy machinery, so that you can concentrate on getting the best quality machines you can, and focus on maintaining them so you might avoid some of these problems. All right, so let's get started. What I'm going to do is disassemble the control panel on my sander, which is one of the problems that I had, and I'll go through what I had to do to get it repaired, and then I'll talk about something that happened to my dust collector and what I did to fix it. Also, these steps may be able to save you a little bit of money along the way, rather than paying full price for manufacturer units. So, first thing we want to do to get started, of course, is to unplug the machinery. Now, what actually happened with this is I was sanding some boards, went upstairs and had lunch. Took me about an hour. I came back, and when I turned on the machine, nothing happened. There was no sound, no explosions or any of that stuff. I didn't hear a breaker kick or anything, and I just hit the switch to turn it on to restart where I was on sanding those boards. Nothing happened, so I checked all the breakers. I used a different outlet, made sure the outlet was still providing power to the machine, and it was. So I knew it was something inside the machine. So what I learned when I worked on my vehicles is I started with the cheapest thing first and worked my way up from there. One thing you probably want to do if your machine is new and is still under warranty, you want to go ahead and go through the manufacturer's warranty process to get that part replaced, rather than do what I'm going to show you today. So what I did is unplug the machine first to make sure there's no power to it, and drape the cord over the top of it. The tools you're going to need, first you want the owner's manual. And what I did first is to start with replacing the switch. There's nothing wrong with this switch, but I replaced it anyway because I ordered the new switch. But then once I got the box open, I realized it wasn't the actual switch that was actually malfunctioning. And I'll go ahead and take the box apart now and show you what I'm talking about. To do that, we need a tiny screwdriver, a 1/4-inch socket driver, an Allen key. I'm not sure what size this is. I think it's 3/32 maybe. Need a soldering iron and a little bit of solder. And then this motor has a drive shaft that goes through this box and into this rod that operates the conveyor belt. And there's a little, there's a little connector, double connector in there. I want to take the bottom off first. And having the owner's manual will show you how all these parts are together. And now I want to take the rest of these off. Okay. Now over here you can probably see this connector with the set screws in it.
And that was on the end of that rod right there, right?
This rod right here.
Okay.
All right. Let's let's take this over to the workbench. Well, actually by this time I did see that this solder connection right here was the one that was loose, and this wire was hanging out here. So I knew right then that there was a problem with this. Okay, so I went ahead and took this apart, took the circuit board out, and I didn't know you really don't need to take the circuit board out at this point, but I thought I did. But at this point, you want to go ahead, if any of these connections are separated, like I said, and the I guess resistance builds up in the wires and they overheat, and this solder will melt before the wires will get damaged. Fortunately, that's what happened here.
So this board actually has a heat sink on it.
Yes. But if you look on this side here, you'll see load 1 and load 2. I'm pretty sure this is the one that broke first. And this is the one that broke second.
You want to pull that plug or not?
Well, it did.
Yeah, it was real loose then, wasn't it?
Yep. It wasn't going to work for very long.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, and once you've got that soldered on there, pretty solid, you want to let it cool for a little while. And then go ahead and try to plug in your plug. Should get it lined up. Okay. Success. All right then. Didn't think we'd actually be making a repair, but it turns out it needed to be resoldered. But it's on there pretty good now. That's a good connection. Hopefully it'll work when we get it put back together. But before we put it back together, I want to explain what happened second so that I can get to the last part of my repair. I used it for a little while and it worked fine after I did the first soldering job. That was on this connector. Then as I was using it, I turned it off to do something, and as soon as I turned it off, it went pop. And I don't know why it did it when I turned off the machine, but it did that. And that's where you can see this black smoke up, or black burnt area up here. And that's where this one blew out. And I knew that's what happened because there was that pop. So it happened the second time, but it was like a month apart. And I'd used the machine 4 or 5 times since the first time I had to solder it. And yeah, so
does the manufacturer suggest you just replace the whole board, but sometimes you can fix that control panel?
They would prefer that you replace the whole board, but okay. I just did this just to see if it would work, and it seemed to work fine.
Do you have any idea what they charge for that board?
No, I don't. I never did get to the point of, because it did work, I never did get to the point of inquiring as to how much one of these would cost.
This same thing happened.
And I don't even know that I could get one for this machine because they made the new model. And it wouldn't fit in this control board. I'd have to contact the manufacturer and see if they could even come up with one.
Right.
So then you just go back through the process. You see there's a flat spot right here on the drive shaft, and you need to line that up with the connector inside. So you should do
Does this one sense the load on the motor and adjust to the conveyor belt, or is it just a constant?
No, it senses the load,
Okay.
and this light will light up when the auto regulation kicks in, and that's what you want to search for when you're turning this on. You want to set it about there, and as you're feeding the wood through, you adjust the handle, thickness handle, so that this light just comes on when it's going through. And then from there, I just take a 1/64th turn. This is a quarter of a turn each time I send a pass through the machine. Then after we get done with reassembling the unit, plug it back in, cross your fingers, and it works.
Back in business.
Yay. And then keep your fingers crossed every time you use it that it doesn't happen again. Right after I've made these repairs is I replaced the capacitor, which sits right behind this
The motor
cover right here on the motor. It's very easy to do. They're not very expensive. I got the capacitor, and this is the capacitor that was in there originally, and they didn't have an exact match. It was a little smaller in diameter, but it was a little bit longer also. And I ended up having to cut some of the plastic rim away in order to get it to fit inside there, and it works. But it was only $14.56 with taxes included. So I figured it was cheap enough things to replace in order to test it. I did make sure there's no charge on it. And what you do to do that is stand on a rubber mat, put a screwdriver across it, and make sure there's no charge in it before I started working on it. I replaced it, and so far everything's working fine on it. And I've used it probably 6 or 7 times since then. And yeah, so, and it was a lot less expensive than going through the manufacturer and trying to replace the whole control unit and all of that, especially since it's a discontinued model. The control unit on my dust collector, if you want to pan over there to on that wall in the back upper left corner. That's not the original. This is the original over here, and it's 220, runs on 220, and I guess single phase. I don't know anything about phases and all that stuff, but this remote control switch, you can see here it had 2 speeds. I don't know what the over is, but it has times where it'll take 2, 4, or 8 hours to turn off. And what actually is wrong, I believe, is this contact that's inside the unit. What it was doing is you hit the remote control switch, and this would fire like 2 or 3 times before it would kick on. And I had Jason Brown come over and help me with it. He tested the capacitors on the motor. He made some adjustments in here. I think it's on this one, this unit. You can adjust these things here for whatever the specifications are on the side panel here. He did all that, and it would work to the point where you would click the remote 2 or 3 times and it would kick on and keep running. But after a while, it would click 5 or 6 times and fire rapidly and never really kick on and keep running. So I don't know if it really is a capacitor or just exactly what's going on here. But I found that unit, the manufacturer wanted to charge me $240 for this whole control unit. Some people might think, well, that's money well spent, and it would be if I had that money. But at the time I was a little short. I was even made an offer that they would get me a discounted price of $170, which again was still a little bit much. But I found that control unit online, and it ran with the same specifications, except that it doesn't have the time function, which I never used that anyway. So as far as I know, it only has 1 speed, and I turn it on, turn it off, and it works just fine. That one was about $136. So if you do a little bit of research and playing around and testing and here and there, you can save yourself a good bit of money doing those things.
We're going to look at one other thing, Bruce. We're interested in this, and I know it's serving as a dust deputy, but you actually made your own. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a DIY sensor that tells you when the bin is full on the dust collector.
All right,
Since my dust collector sits outside, and a lot of times it's cold out there, and I don't want to go outside, and check it all the time. So this will tell me when it's full.
So what did you have to order to do this?
I ordered the big red light, the little green light, and the 12-volt power source.
Does the power source have the sensor with it?
No.
Okay. So you had
actually, also I ordered the sensor.
Okay.
So there's 4 things. The green light, you don't really need the green light. I just did it because
you know it's functional.
I know it's got power to it.
Right.
I ordered the green light, the red light, the sensor, and the 12-volt power source.
So is this a difficult project to do?
No, not at all. All I did was, the most difficult thing was drilling a hole through the top of the lid on the dust collector drum. So, and that was a 3/4 inch hole. And I really didn't have anything that would drill through metal that was 3/4 of an inch. But I did have an auger bit, and I kind of sacrificed it because once it got through there, it's dull as a brick.
Probably a step bit would work real well.
Yeah.
So for this point of electric peace of mind, what did that cost you?
No more than $60, $70 tops. I think the biggest thing was the sensor was about $45.
Does the sensor get dirty? I mean, being in that dust environment?
I don't know. I've never had it go off. So it's that new.
Oh, so you haven't filled it yet?
Yeah.
You haven't seen the red light yet?
Yeah, so it's
okay.
Not been filled up yet.
All right. Bruce, thanks for letting us in your shop and giving us your knowledge on fixing tools. Sometimes I think people just migrate their tools to the trash bin when they probably could spend a little bit of money and have a tool that will work well.
Yeah, it takes a little bit more effort, but I think it's worth it in the end. And I appreciate the opportunity to do this. My shop wouldn't be nearly this clean without having to be able to do this demonstration for you today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.